I'll tell you what, I will bet you that the pitch deck and the season outline for this were stellar. The end result? The Acolyte. All right. So I didn't get to talk about the penultimate episode last week because I was on vacation. So I've now seen both of the final two episodes. And boy, I would give so much to be able to just roll back time a little bit and be in the room during the writing sessions and the planning and just pace this thing better. So I'm thinking mostly about the 7th episode when I say this, but like, what was that? I mean, like, I know what it was, logistically, plot-wise, I know what it was, and the plot isn't even bad, but like, we were introduced to the idea that there was gonna be another side to this story like half a season ago, and we finally get it, and you spend an entire episode telling us almost nothing we didn't either already know or could have easily guessed. Like, the only thing that played out slightly different from what I was expecting is how much this was Saul's fault in specific. Like, the idea that the Jedi were responsible for the deaths and they were covering it up and like that, I was taking all that as a given. So about the only thing that threw me off was the fact that it basically, at least initially, all narrowed down onto this one guy. This one guy who got an idea in his head, went too far in pursuit of that idea, did something awful when he killed the head of this coven, and then the consequences were covered up. So, yeah, none of this was surprising. And it didn't necessarily even have to be. But the fact that you held on to this so long from the introduction of the first flashback and planting the idea that there's another side of the story we're not seeing, you can't set that up, make us wait half a season to get the answers, and the answer be basically almost exactly what I just assumed was the case anyway. This thing's got its priorities all out of whack. Because another moment that should have worked, and if the thing had been better structured, it would have. The mind erasure of, like, I'm just going to talk spoilers, like if you hadn't guessed already. I'm not going over the plot. I'm getting this out like 2 days after the thing went live. You should have seen it by now if you care. But when May's memory gets erased, I am a real easy mark for jerking tears out of me because somebody has lost their memory. Whether it be Donna Noble in Doctor Who, or whether it be Grunkle Stan in Gravity Falls. The very idea of somebody having their mind wiped, that they're still here, but they are missing a huge piece of fundamentally who they are, a huge piece of their life. Hell, even smaller moments like in Bells of St. John, which is a Doctor Who episode I don't like that much, but one of the main antagonist figures in that, she comes out of this trance and you realize she has no memory prior to when she was a small child, and that crushed me. I'm such an easy mark for mind wipe for big emotional hits, and I'm watching these two hug as they prepare to wipe May's mind, and I feel nothing. I feel nothing. Like it hit there was like a twinge when she was talking to whatever the hell the green Jedi woman's name was, and there was that sense, like she could tell a lot was missing, like she was missing something, but she didn't know what it was. Like that got me the tiniest bit, but I should have been bawling my eyes out in the lead up to this. Like when the two of them hugged and her memory starts to go and she can't fully repeat the thing they used to say as kids, that should have destroyed me. And it didn't. Why didn't it? Because this thing is structured as an absolute mess. So much more work needed to go into these characters, and a better understanding needed to happen that there's a difference between the amount of screen time we get with a character and how much they are actually characterized. because I think that is ultimately the big overriding issue with most of this. A lot of these characters are badly undercharacterized, and I don't think it's the actor's fault in literally any of these cases. The extent to which this works at all is the actors pulling a lot of weight, which you especially get with, I guess we're calling him the Stranger, the Sith guy with the helmet, especially with him. There's a lot of energy in that performance. And honestly, Osha with him was more interesting than she was on her own, or she was even with May. But so many of these characters, I'm like, I don't get what makes you tick. You haven't sold me on who you are as a person, so I'm not invested in you as a person. So when you try and hit me with an emotional payoff, it just lands very flatly. Now, I know I'm spending a lot of time complaining, and honestly, I probably will continue to do that. I want to be real clear about this. There's some phenomenal ideas in here. A lot of the core concepts that it's doing, that it's got, I'm like, I want that. I want more of a lot of what it's doing. I just don't think it executed it exceptionally well. And it's not even a case of like it completely botched the idea. This isn't a case where I would say you ruined that idea. I don't think they did. So in a weird way, I kind of wanted to get a second season because I want them to learn and do better. Because these are interesting ideas. A lot of what's going on here. And I think it was interesting how they managed to balance that. Is this a condemnation of the Jedi as a whole? Honestly, not really. Like, it singles out Soul for some massive freaking mistakes, but again, because the actor's able to sell it well enough, you do still get a sense that, like, he really thought he was doing the best thing. He was wrong. He was deeply wrong, but he did still think that. And he did some really bad stuff in the pursuit of that. And then the cover-up of that, it feels in many ways like the standard fraternity of silence that you get in so many things. Whether it be the police or the church or the medical profession. You know how rare it is for a doctor to get their license revoked? Part of the reason being the people who decide whether or not that happens are other doctors, and they are super reluctant to ever punish one of their own, even when somebody probably shouldn't be allowed to practice anymore. Like, that's a thing that happens. So I don't think this is a full takedown of the Jedi as a concept. Although it is bringing up some interesting things, and it is especially interesting, and I'll be curious to see if Disney ever has the cojones to dive into this. I'm not sure if I've had this specific thought before, but it's always struck me as odd. Ever since Anakin was introduced in episode 1 and was told he was too young to begin training at frickin' 9, that always struck me as weird at the time. I don't think I had the next thought that kind of follows from that, which I had watching this when the idea is brought up that Osha is too old when she was a kid. And that is that they are indoctrinating these children. It can't just be a matter of training. Luke learned, and he was way too damn old. But they get him young so they can indoctrinate them. Now, if you feel that what the Jedi push and believe and their overly stoic and closed off way of being is a good way to be, you might even think that's a good thing. But I think in general, just the idea that that is flat out what they're doing and has always been what they're doing. That's not a new idea being pushed by this series. Like, that's been there. And I'm not even sure I want to give this show credit for bringing that up. I just found myself thinking it while watching it because it's the kind of thing that feels like this show should look at and should explore and should look into. You know what? This made me appreciate Andor all the more because Andor shows that it's not enough just to have great ideas. Because this has really good ideas. But Andor had great ideas and masterful execution of those ideas with characters that it got us invested in and you got to know them. Some of them with not that much screen time. and some of them needing to get you on board with what their deal is so quickly, and it does such a masterful job, and I am appreciating that all the more now, having the contrast of a show with good ideas and a pretty solid plot that just doesn't sell the characters well. And I do legitimately think it's a writing problem, because the actors who are in this that I've seen other places, I know they can sell a character, but you can only build off the foundation you have, and the foundation is the writing. It's not even that the characters are poorly written, they're just flatly written. There is so much more work that really needed to be done to really get into the heads of Soul, especially as a character, but also Osha, May, hell, any of the other Jedi for that matter. And the show just isn't very good at that. And I can't even say I don't think it's trying to do that. I think it is trying to do that. I think it's just not good at it. So what I would love to see the original outline of this and to reconfigure it, because I don't think you'd have to change that much to get this to work. I think you'd have to trim a few things to allow some more characterizing moments to breathe, and or integrate characterization more into scenes where it just doesn't seem to be there. And I think do that and maybe rearrange the order that some of the stuff is presented, or at least how much screen time certain aspects get. This could have been great. And maybe if it gets a second season, it could be. I don't know. Like, here's the thing. It's always tough, and I think it's a harder sell now than it's ever been, to say that this is a show with potential and I want it to get a second season so that it improves. We're not in that world anymore. Largely because shows, especially things that go straight to streaming, are expected to come out fully formed and to be as good as they're ever going to be right out the gate. And sometimes that is in fact the case. In fact, sometimes the first season is as good as it's ever going to be, and it's downhill from there. Stranger Things. But other times, like, it used to be a lot more common, back when most shows were just on television, be it network or cable, that a first season would have some growing pains, have some hiccups, be like, that's not quite working, is it? But you don't just cut it. You go back, you trim out what didn't work, you refine what needed a little more work, and you keep what did work. And then the second, third season, you get a better show, and you're like, there we go. That's the potential this had. And I want this thing to at least have the chance to live up to the potential of the ideas it's doing. And it clearly sets itself up for a second season. So narratively, there's plenty of weight there. Oh, I'm not going to say anything about, or other than just acknowledge the fact that it exists, the freaking hooded guy in the background, which I guess the fandom has all concluded it's Darth Plagueis. I don't think that's confirmed in episode. I don't really care. Like, I just don't. I don't care. Like, I don't care about lore. This is a thing I keep running up into, whether it is to my benefit for enjoying a show because I don't get bogged down in lore issues and I can just take it for what it's worth. Sometimes it's a detriment to my enjoyment of the show because the show expects me to care about the lore and I don't. And oftentimes this puts me in conflict with the fandom because so much of the most vocal fandom of Star Wars, Doctor Who, Marvel, what have you, are obsessed with the lore, and I don't care very much. I'm not going to say I don't care at all, but I'm not here for lore. I'm here for story. And this is a decent story that should have been better, and I think with a second season has a chance to be better. But as it stands, taking this as a whole, this is frustrating. This has a handful of good things in it. I think the Stranger is great. I think he's great. I think he is probably the best characterized person in the entire thing. Because just from the way he moves, like, it tells you so much about him. There's so much characterization baked into almost everything he does that just isn't there for most of the other characters. And I don't know how much of that is a problem with how many of these characters either are or want to be Jedi. So they're doing the overly stoic thing. And it's not that you can't inject some characterization into that. Ewan McGregor injected characterization into that just fine. But, like, it's hard to do. And it's especially hard when you surround that character with a whole bunch of other stoic people who are also basically equally flat and undercharacterized. So maybe a future season with way less emphasis on the Jedi and way more on Osha and the Stranger and, you know, however they want to handle May. Like this could maybe still be something. Right now, it's not, though. It's not nothing, but it's not much. And it could have been a lot. Yeah, this was just kind of frustrating. Taken as a whole, frustrating is a good word for this. And I don't think the lows are that low. But there should be a heck of a lot more highs than there are. There aren't that many. A lot of it, much like the Jedis themselves in this, a lot of this is pretty flat. The Acolyte. Last 2 episodes and my thoughts on the season overall. What did you think about this? Be polite. Like, you don't have to like this. You can hate it. But, like, could you not call people names? Like, don't call me names. Don't call the makers of this names. Just don't. And I know people are going to anyway. I'm going to have to clear a bunch of nonsense out of the comments, including people who are just going to look at the thumbnail and look at my face and assume they think they know my opinion already and get mad at me. Discourse is lovely these days. Oh, by the way, on the main channel this weekend, I'm going to have a video addressing the question, has the fandom always been this bad? Because the answer is more complicated than it should be. But that's on the main channel. As for right here, like, share, subscribe. Those help me out. Patreon pays the bills, enables me to do this as my living. Don't worry too much about it, though. You take a relaxed attitude around here, you can come on back. Next time you need a break, I need one. And now to thank my highest supporting patrons. Robin Moore, Zumila Fulla, Goddess Elida, Trista Ashley, Oliver B., Melissa Peterson, Tarak, The Thing That Goes Going to the Anime, Jean Foray, Movie Turtle, Ulrich Bogdan, Loki Eris, Linda Walters, Jen, Auntie Kate 808, Becky Sparks, Fernambilax the Poodle, Tracy Scrabbit, Angry Casperol, Dave Hall, White Bearish, Rosalind Bennett, Pal Barabajoggle, Lucy Wood, Dorm Mayhew, and Mary G. Thank you for your support, and consider supporting me as well on Patreon.